Welcome back to Voices from the Valley, where we meet and learn from the movers and the shakers in and around the Merrimack Valley. I am your host, John Bachmann, and with me, as always, is our other host, Ben Tallberg.
John, how are you this morning?
Man, if I was any better, it would be illegal. I'm doing great.
Is that right?
It is. Well, hey, we just got back from a networking meeting this morning.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Right? We had a packed room.
A lot of people.
Met a lot of cool people. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I love doing this thing, is we're meeting a bunch of interesting people, but it's not just the regular run-of-the-mill that I may run into. It's I'm meeting other business owners that I ordinarily might not meet, right?
Yep.
And that's one thing we talked about when we started this up, is getting to be able to meet those people, right?
Right.
Yeah. Today, we're getting to meet one of those people.
Great.
So today we have with us Anthony Tomacchio, who is the co-owner of Loaded and was the co-founder of Stacks. But more importantly than those two roles, Anthony, your husband to Katrina and your father and daddy to those three beautiful girls. Anthony, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming in.
Good to see you.
Yeah. I know we're asking you to come in here awfully early, and kid care, that's tough to do, especially when you're running a business. So that's one thing we'll be talking about as well. But before we get too far into it, for those of the listeners out there that don't know you or may not know you yet, give us a Reader's Digest of who you are, how you found yourself, co-founding Stacks, and starting up Loaded.
Yeah. So I grew up in Methuen, so not too far. And growing up, I played sports. I grew up in an Italian household, so food was always the center part, like family supper, Sunday suppers with the extended family, eating pasta, meatballs, and all that stuff. So the culture of food has always been huge in my life. Just being around in the kitchen, hanging out, watching my mom cook, watching my grandparents cook. That was always big. And, from there, my grandfather and his brothers every fall would work at some of the fairs in New Hampshire, selling sausage subs, steak and cheese subs. Wow. And they were super busy up there. So, starting when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I'd go up with my brothers and we'd cut peppers and onions all day for like $7 an hour. And, we got to see the back end of, working in the food service. And, we had fun. We'd take the money we've made and go buy anything we could at the fair, play games, and just blow it all. Yeah, that weekend.
Money's gone.
Yeah,
so kid.
Yeah, but we'd look forward to it every year. And then got older, went to college, went to Westfield State out in Western Mass. Then from there,
I went study on that?
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice.
Yep, the goal was to go into law enforcement. So after I graduated, I was going through the whole interview process, just constant interviews, physical tests, all that stuff. In the meantime, my dad asked me to help him run his business, which was a courier service. So I did that for a few years. And then in the meantime, I was still trying to, pursue that law enforcement dream, which wasn't panning out because I was terrible with interviews. And I started a side gig of, related to the law enforcement industry. And, that side gig snowballed. And within a year, I had to have the conversation with my wife, Katrina, of like, hey, it's time to, shit or get off the pot. I need to take this full time or just kill it. So I was like, do you want to, quit your job? Come work for me. We'll move to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where it's a lot more affordable to live and the industry is better. And, a month or two later, we were living in Pittsburgh, working full time on our own business.
So let's just talk about that quickly. It has something to do with law enforcement or military, something, and you're a supplier?
So we handcrafted gun holsters.
Okay.
So they were plastic thermoformed holsters. And a lot of it was for military and law enforcement, but also a huge civilian market for that as well. They were all completely custom. People could select the color, the style, like what handgun it was for. So it got really busy really fast once Katrina brought her marketing expertise and, really helped me out to like get the word out there, get the product out there. And I just, made them.
Yeah.
And she did the rest. So that was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of lessons. Just her and I working together, and basically we
working together.
Yeah, we had this goal, and we were both kind of working towards this goal together, and grew together, and it was a lot of fun.
Did you have this in like the garage? You were making these things, or was it?
It started off in the garage, and then we actually upgraded that to a 3,000 square foot warehouse.
Gotcha.
And just we had a public showroom where people could come in, try out stuff, place orders.
Wow.
So for a little while, we were letting them place the order that day, and I'd just go in the back, I'd make it for them, and, they leave with a brand new brand new product. So
that's amazing.
It was a lot of fun. But then we did that for almost 6 years down in Pittsburgh. We lived there. We loved that city. It was so much fun living there. Yeah. Great food scene, great bars, great breweries. And, that's where kind of I got the taste of like how cool restaurants could be and how cool like that the restaurant industry really is. A lot of the concepts and just the different flavors and fusions of different cultures that we experienced down there. It was just like nothing I'd ever experienced growing up in the Merrimack Valley. So we ended up, COVID hit. We decided to close down, that business. We
Why?
moved. We had our daughter, and the industry was changing.
Okay.
We just kind of lost our passion for it. Things were getting a lot more politically charged. And we just saw it as a time like, okay, it's time to move on.
Was it like there was gun issues out there and you didn't want to be associated with that anymore, or was it something totally
No,
different?
it was more when it's an election year. That's when it was like, oh, they're coming to take our guns.
Yeah.
So all of our customers were just very like charged up.
Yeah.
And it's like, if their order was delayed, we'd get an email or a call like of them freaking out, being like, I'm going to die one day and it's going to be your fault. And it just, dealing with all those things, we were just like, this isn't what we want to do anymore. So,
I think that's really important for me to understand from you where you're coming from. And I 100% can agree with that and see that. So
So we just, Katrina and I talked and we're like, I think it's time. I don't know what we're going to do, but we just, we'll move home. We had some help from my family, and we're just like, we'll figure it out.
Wow. So what'd you do from there?
So we moved back. My younger brother, Paul, owned Stuffed, which was a Mexican street food in downtown Haverhill. So I asked him, hey, if I moved back, would you be able to give me a job? So he said yes. This was my first time actually working in a restaurant as an adult, so I learned really quick. I became the manager there and gave him some time off, which he finally liked after, I think like 4 or 5 years of being there, every day. And I guess I learned how passionate I was in the restaurant industry. And, I'm a creative person, and I quickly started just running specials. Be like, hey, I threw this together, and, we'd run it on special. And this was at the peak of COVID that I was working there, and the lasting room in Haverhill was closed down. And we had heard like, oh yeah, like that spot might be opening up. So I talked to Katrina and said, I'd really like to open up a restaurant. And I'm like, do you want to...
What was the response when you first said, hey, Katrina, I got another crazy idea for you. What do you think?
She's like, well, basically I was like, well, what do you got? Like, pitch it.
Yeah.
So, I have a pretty good track record with my business ideas. And I said, I think I'll ask Paul if he wants to go in on this because Paul had the network. He knew downtown Haverhill. And that was, downtown Haverhill was still new to us at the time. So came up with a concept for Stacks. I said, it's kind of like this place back in Pittsburgh. We took like 3 or 4 different restaurants and are like, what if we made one restaurant out of all these different, things that we loved about, back there. So, I talked to Paul and got him on board. And then, we talked to my dad and said, hey, Dad, what do you think about this? So we got in contact with the landlord and began the long process of trying to buy the lasting room from the lasting room owner so that we could get into that space. And that was a roller coaster because he didn't want to sell. He was hoping that, COVID would kind of finish so that he could open back up.
So a little quick side note, the lasting house, is that what
the lasting room?
Lasting room. Sorry, I'm not from Haverhill area, but they owned the business, the restaurant right there.
Yeah. So did
they own the building too?
No. So they had a lease.
Okay.
And basically what we needed to do was purchase just the business in order to get into that lease. And the landlord said he couldn't evict him. He just said, well, you got to work with him. You get him to agree, pay him what he wants to get paid, and then we'll open up a lease, start the lease for you guys.
So he was still paying his rent.
He was still paying his rent,
but was completely shut down, not doing anything.
Yeah, he was shut down for, I think, almost a year. Wow. Just paying the rent.
That's amazing.
I don't know how somebody could do that. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, so, we saw an opportunity and we jumped at it. And, we figured out a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
And
you're not in the food industry yet. You're in you kind of are because you were working for your brother.
Yeah.
But you now knew that you had to hire cooks or chefs or whatever from here. Were you intimidated by that part of it?
I had no idea what I was doing, but like I said, Paul, one of the reasons why I partnered with him was because he had been working in Haverhill for a while.
Gotcha.
He started his, I think, cooking career in Haverhill. So he had a lot of friends. He had a lot of people in his network, and he felt confident that he could staff the place, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
We opened up with an amazing crew.
Yeah.
We put out some great food, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of buzz before you guys were even open. So I got to hand it to the marketing, and Katrina, that's her background is marketing, correct?
Yes. Yeah. She's been doing marketing for 15 years now.
Was she involved with that marketing as well, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So she was on board kind of as a social media guru.
Yeah.
And marketing. She, when we started posting shakes, she was just like, we're going to post a shake a day for 2 weeks, and just, it blew up. Because those shakes, no one had seen them before, and they're something else.
Yeah, I'll try to get some pictures into the video about it as well too. But for those people that haven't visited Stacks yet, give us the concept.
So basically, Stacks is craft sandwiches, boozy milkshakes. They got 24 beers and ciders on tap, and it's just overall a fun atmosphere. And
okay, now I'm getting the idea.
Yeah, so all the milkshakes,
man.
Yeah, all the milkshakes come with a full-size dessert on top. So,
wow,
and you could add, add booze to it. So,
yeah,
wow, they cause quite the stir.
And even better, so I'm dairy free, so I see these and go, God damn it, I want those. They always have a vegan option on there, even vegan cheesecake on top of a goddamn shake.
Was that something that you found in Pittsburgh that they were doing?
So a couple places in Pittsburgh did have you could add alcohol to a milkshake. None of them really had the dessert on top.
Yeah.
That's something that we first saw in Vegas, way back. And it was kind of stuck in the back of our mind when it's anytime we try to open a business now, it's what can we do? What's our unique selling point? Where's the void? And what can we bring that's going to be different? That's going to set us apart. Because anyone can go and sell, chicken sandwiches or burgers. What's going to make us stand out? And for Stacks, it was the milkshakes. It was the over-the-top boozy milkshakes.
Yeah, good for you.
And that's awesome. But everything's going well over at Stacks. Things are going great. Apparently, you weren't satisfied. You turn around and say, I want to open another restaurant.
Yeah. So
All right, Ben, we're taking a little break in the action right now to have a little rep session like we like to do.
Yes, sir.
Have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, quote unquote, the old days, I used to hear a ton about, I need a tune-up, I'm getting a tune-up, I'm changing my spark plugs, yada, 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 yada. I don't hear that too much anymore. Are tune-ups still a real thing? And is it still like the old days where I'm checking the wires, I'm checking the spark plugs, and now I'm good?
Right. It used to be, I got to get this thing a tune-up because the fuel mileage is terrible. But now it's changed. If somebody comes up to me and asks, how much is it for a tune-up? Because that's kind of a normal question when they call it a mechanic. It's more like, well, let's have a conversation. What do you want to do with this vehicle, first of all? Because if you're just going to trade it in a couple of weeks, then why are we doing any sort of maintenance to it or work or anything? Second of all, how many miles? How old is this vehicle? That will actually bring it back to, does it need spark plugs? There's plenty of cars that can go 100,000 miles before they need spark plugs. There's other vehicles that can only go 30,000 miles. So it really depends on the car manufacturer. So it's more like us just trying to educate the customer and find out what the plan is. And, there's a lot of information we try and gather to educate our customers.
Well, actually, are tune-ups only a thing for combustion engines?
Yes.
Gasoline. So electric vehicles, do you have no tune-ups?
There's not a quote-unquote tune-up to it. There's still some services that need to be done. There's still some fluids that need to be changed. There's still taking the tires and rotating those around. There's still brakes. There's still suspension. But the tune-up, the classic tune-up, is no longer going to be used in that conversation.
Very interesting.
Question. Yeah.
Interesting.
So when I am driving my electric car around, there is less moving parts too. So we're going to have to change our businesses pretty soon as mechanics and how people are educated on tune-ups. But, I had a side note. If I was going to drive my new Tesla up to my cabin on the lake, there's a lot of people that are opening up their summer homes and things like that. Insurance-wise, what are some of those things that we have to worry about as far as those summer homes and things?
Well, the main thing is the home itself. You need a policy for that, similar to your homeowner's policy, that needs to cover you for the structure as well as the liability. If people are showing up to your place and you don't want them to get injured there and not be covered. So those types of things. But at that cabin, you probably have quote unquote toys there.
Yes, I do.
Boats and jet skis and all the things. All of those have specific policies that should be on them. Now, I shouldn't say all of them because some boats, based on their length and their horsepower of their engine, can be covered under the homeowner's policy, ironically enough. Same deal with the jet skis. Sometimes the liability gets a little tricky on those. So there are situations where they need their own policy. So as I always say on here, a little disclaimer, speak to your local insurance agent. Make sure that they're insured properly. And if you don't have one, you're dealing with one of those national companies, give me a call. But again, speak to an independent agent. They'll speak to you about what you should have in place there. But
Perfect.
Yeah. So get those boats and jet skis insured because it is getting warm out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Awesome. All right, Ben, what do you say we jump back into this interview?
Yeah, let's do it.
Everything's going well over at Stacks. Things are going great. Apparently you weren't satisfied. You turn around and say, I want to open another restaurant.
Yeah. So had more ideas. I have a constant, loop of ideas in my head that it's like, I get the itch to, start something new.
Yeah.
Again, noticing voids in the market and figuring out, this is something that's needed. And again, talked to Katrina and said, hey, I have this idea. The spot where Loaded is, that was going to be a prep kitchen for Stacks.
Okay.
So we were just paying the rent on that. We were converting it, and it was just something that wasn't going to make us money. It was just going to be something to make our lives easier, and our prep cooks would have more space to, prep and stock up the food. But we got to a point. It's like, well, what if we use that spot to make money? So I, talked to Katrina. I talked to my dad and my brother and said, hey, I have this idea. And then Loaded was born. And we actually in December. So this conversation happened in November, I think, of last year. And then in December, I was approached and, my dad offered to buy me out of stacks, and, I could focus on loaded full time. Katrina and I got loaded out of the deal, and among some other things. And, Katrina and I were happy because we could do things our way.
Yeah.
You mean like not a partnership now?
Correct.
And you have to go in front of everybody and say, okay, we want to add this to the menu or whatever you were talking about. Now you guys have this solely. And
Yeah.
say, yeah.
And Katrina and I have been working together for long enough where we're really on the same page with a lot of things, and we like to pivot really quick if we notice something isn't working. And when you have a lot of partners and a lot of different, personalities and hands in there, it can be tough to make those changes on the fly.
Sure.
But for Katrina and I, we're just like, yeah, this would be so much fun. Like, let's do it. It's scary, branching out on our own again. But we knew it was time to, switch things up yet again.
So this is 4 months ago? Or was this a year and 4 months?
This was this past.
22.
Yeah.
And so now what is loaded?
So loaded is, loaded comfort food. We do loaded baked potatoes, mashed potatoes, French fries, and mac and cheese. Mm-hmm. So any of our entrees, we have buffalo chicken, chicken bacon ranch, all this stuff, and you choose your base of those. So you can get the buffalo chicken on a baked potato or buffalo chicken on mashed potatoes.
Wow.
All that stuff.
Okay.
And the thing that really sets us apart, you can go most places and get a loaded fry or stuff like that, or mac and cheese. We brought loaded Korean street corn dogs to Haverhill.
What is that?
That facial expression was fantastic.
What?
So basically, unlike an American corn dog, which is just, a hot dog dipped in basically this cornmeal batter, Korean corn dogs are usually like either mozzarella, all hot dog, or like a half and half.
Okay.
And then it's rolled in a yeasted wheat flour batter. And then rolled in like panko or like diced potatoes or sometimes Fruity Pebbles, and then deep fried. Wow. So it's, it's crunchy.
You do have a lot of ideas.
Yeah. So then we're like, okay, how can we take this idea and, put our own spin on it? So I'm like, well, let's load it with toppings. Yeah. So instead of just, this plain, Korean corn dog, we were like, well, let's do, a buffalo chicken one, or like a bacon ranch, or we have all these different flavors. I think we have 10 different.
How'd you learn how
styles.
to do that?
YouTube.
Oh,
just trial and error.
Sure.
Yeah, we just, the idea comes first, and then how do we do it comes after.
Wow,
and,
cool.
Basically, we committed to this idea without ever having made one. We've had them before, and it's just like, well, it's time to learn. Yeah, time to learn. So
figure it out. And he's being a little bit humble here too. He talks, it's a buffalo dog. Well, the buffalo dog is smothered in all this stuff, and even they smash up Takis and Taki dust all over them. It's amazing.
Yeah, they're delicious.
Yeah,
they're really good.
So, I mean, real quickly, we would go there and have one. Is this like a meal, or is it more like you have a couple of them? How big are these things?
I mean, it's a hot dog or mozzarella. I mean, some people go and have one and then also get an entree. Yeah. Other people go and get 3 corn dogs. Yeah. Really, everyone's different. Some people will, after, or if they know they're going out drinking, they'll stop by for a corn dog before or after the bars. So it's good because we're located right on the parking lot side of the building. So everyone's different.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, fat guy over here, I'll tell you what I do is
What do you do, John?
I get the buffalo dog, no ranch because dairy free. And then what else do I do? Oh, it's all beef, no cheese on it. And then I get a side of fries. Mm-hmm. And usually split those with my son or daughter when we go. But it's usually 4 dogs around the table for us and then some kind of fry or something like that.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm easy. I always do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
That's my deal.
Yeah, it's always the buffalo beef dog.
Yes. Damn good. It is funny, though, when I go in there, and I usually do my Instagram posts. Katrina usually messages me right after, and it's like, you guys support us like more than anybody else. And similar to Amesbury Foreign Auto, I spend too much money in one place.
It's true. I always get the same thing, tires.
Yes, always tires, always tires. What thing, Anthony, you alluded to a little bit, and I'm very curious about this. You were converting over the test or the side kitchen, the prep
Yeah, the
kitchen.
prep kitchen.
You were converting that over. That space previously was like a hair salon.
Yes.
There's probably a lot of challenges for a restaurant to take a hair salon with how it's built out to then like convert it to be able to use for a restaurant. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely challenges there, but the good thing is there's plenty of plumbing for hair salons.
Yeah.
So for the plumbers to hook up, it wasn't that big of a job because they could, however many sinks. I think there were like 6 sinks in the salon before. So they didn't have to run a lot of plumbing to, all the way in the back. So that was good. But, coming up with the overall design, the hoods, because we're in the ground floor, to run hoods all the way up to the roof of the building would have cost, I think, over $100,000. So we had to get creative there. We found some ventless hoods to kind of avoid that, which were about half the price. And, just we figured out a way to do it. And, then figuring out, okay, if this is going to be its own restaurant, how much space do we want for the kitchen and how much space do we want for, dining? And we just figured, well, let's try to, with how the restaurant industry is right now, there's a huge focus on takeout and delivery with Uber Eats, DoorDash. So I thought, let's overbuild the kitchen. Let's have more space than we need right now. And, we'll just have a small dining area because we figured most people were going to want to take their food out. We were wrong about that. The tables fill up really fast and people will wait for a table to open up. They'll order their food and say, we'll wait for a table. And usually it works out pretty quick because people don't stick around for long. We don't have a liquor license or anything. So usually by the time they finish up, we clean the table. There's another person sitting down and right as their food's coming out. Mm-hmm. So it's worked out really well. But yeah, we have a lot of room for, those third-party deliveries. We've been making a killing there, and we want to keep going and really leaning into that aspect of, the restaurant industry.
Well, you brought up a good point there with the third-party deliveries. I have some friends in the industry as well. They struggle with some of the fees that Uber charges and some of the other fees that come along, DoorDash. How do you combat that?
So what we need to do is DoorDash will charge us 30% commission, which is usually that profit.
So you make nothing if you don't do anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like it's basically a way to go through more product, need more people, and if you don't make any changes, then yes, you will basically be doing all that extra work for, a couple extra bucks. Yeah. But what we do on third party is we almost offset the cost. We will raise our prices through those third party because our costs are then higher. So we have a certain, when figuring out the pricing, we don't just say like, oh, this sounds like a $15 thing. People will be happy to pay that. No, like what really goes into it is you need to look at your costs and understand like, all right, we want our food cost to be at this. Mm-hmm. And what I did is kind of said like, okay, well that commission is going to kind of go into the food cost so that now those meals are costing us more to make. So we're going to offset that and the customer ends up paying more through those convenient websites.
So walk me through it because I don't do DoorDash. I don't know much about it at all. But I'm guessing that what you're saying is if I ordered my food through DoorDash to Loaded, is that how it works? Do I go to DoorDash to order food?
Yeah, so if you would have it, you would download the DoorDash app or Uber Eats.
Okay.
And all the stores that are within your radius basically would come up that are part of that have an account set up with them. And you would say like, oh, I want to order Loaded. And then you'd go through the menu. All the prices are listed. And you'd select what you want and hit, send or place order. And then however long after, you'd get a message saying like, your order's been confirmed.
Right.
Your driver is on their way to pick up the food. Your driver has picked up the food and is on your way. And you can see on the map where they are delivering your food.
Gotcha.
So it's really simple. It's really convenient. But DoorDash has a lot of, but all third parties have a lot of like hidden fees and
Sure.
stuff like that.
They got to get paid.
Yeah, they're providing a service. They're
Sure.
providing convenience.
Sure. So their prices are actually a little bit more than if I came to your store directly or your restaurant directly and ordered it and picked it up and left.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So we always recommend, like, especially if you live in Haverhill, we say like, hey, order through us. We have drivers that'll go to you. It's like a $5 delivery fee, pay our menu prices and save some money. But for the people that are outside of Haverhill, a little bit further away, this is how you get our food delivered.
Completely makes sense. It's a
Yes,
convenience fee, basically.
Yeah, you're paying for the convenience.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Totally makes sense.
But yeah, seeing the prices on those parties, it's like, wow, that's expensive. But then people will come in and be like, oh, I thought you were way more expensive than this. And then just explaining like, oh yeah, prices through those.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit more.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I just want to go back to that conversion situation again.
Yeah.
So if other restaurateurs are out there and they have a commercial real estate agent that are showing them different spaces, and it's always restaurant spaces, would you recommend having them look at atypical spots? Like a hair salon, maybe it's a good place to start?
It depends on your capital and how much you're willing to do. Because a lot of the times you will have to have an architect or have someone come in to design the whole floor plan. There's a lot more to do in order to convert it compared to saying, oh, this pizza shop closed down. It's basically turnkey. All you have to do is new paint and, it's ready to go. So in terms of working with the city and health inspectors, building inspectors, if you're not willing to do all that or you don't really know what you're doing, I would suggest getting, a restaurant space. But if you do know what you're doing or you do have the resources, then get creative.
What about the landlord too? Doesn't that have a lot to do with it? If you're buying it, that's one thing, but if you're leasing it, then the landlord has a lot to say.
So the landlord would be able to say like, no, I don't want a kitchen, I don't want hoods going up, or I don't want it to be used for this. Usually it would fall on the tenant.
Got it.
And some landlords will work with you, and if it's something permanent, some may, but most of them are going to say like, oh, if you want to convert it, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the times if you put a hood in, that hood's going to stay when you leave.
You don't get to
you don't take it down with you because it was built for that space.
Right.
So usually you'd want to make sure you have a nice long lease, at least 5 to 10 years in that spot, because it's a big investment to convert it all.
What about fire suppression, the sprinklers or something like that? I don't know. What do you need to do with a restaurant? You need a lot of...
Yeah. You work very closely with the building inspectors, the health inspectors, make sure everything's, up to code. Then there's also fire inspectors. They'll come in and make sure that, all your equipment is positioned properly under the Ansel system in the hoods. And if you have any equipment that should be under the hood that isn't, they'll let you know. And, they make sure everything is where
the insurance
it needs to
companies raise a lot of noise about that too.
Yeah, I'm
Guilty.
sure.
Guilty.
Yeah.
We cause problems about that, but for good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to make sure, and then on top of that, there's the recurring cost of getting the hoods cleaned and serviced and inspected and all your fire extinguishers. There's a lot to running the business that, it's not thought of until it's happening. And, even now I've been, with Stacks, I was never on the back end, business end of things. I was more creative and shakes and all that stuff and social media with Katrina. And now it's all of this is falling on us. So there's a lot that I'm learning with this of oh, I didn't do that yet. Okay. There's, all the bills piling up. It's okay, got to get to those. It's, there's just so much that you're not aware of until you're kind of in it.
How about you and your wife? How is that going? You guys still work together? Do you have a wall that separates you? Like my wife and I, we have the shop and then we have the office. Do you guys have any sort of boundaries?
So we pretty much swap off with our schedules because we have the 3 kids at home. So a lot of the times Katrina will be in certain days, earlier in the day, and then I'll come in for the dinner rush and,
Do you see each other? Well, I guess that's the next question.
Yeah, so we're currently closed Sundays and Tuesdays, so those are family days. And then, we'll spend time together in the morning, and then usually when I get home from work, everyone's asleep. So, and then I'm up in the middle of the night with the kids. Yeah, so that's fun.
And time-wise, I know restaurant owners, they have know, like you're always at the restaurant. Is that true? I mean, what's the schedule like? You wake up at what time and then you go to sleep at what time? And what do you do just to make sure the business runs?
So usually I have people, most days I have someone there at 8 to kind of get stuff, started. They'll start prep. I'll typically be in, Katrina and I will typically be in around 9:30 to kind of get the rest of the stuff started. I will stay, on a day that I work, I'll stay from 9:30 to maybe 10:30 that night. I go home, I'm in bed by, 11:30. Then I'm getting up with the baby when she's in the middle of the night. So lately I've been working on about 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night.
It's a grind. Yeah.
It is, but it's temporary, and that's what we keep reminding ourselves. And the main thing is getting a solid staff in place so that we are able to take some time away.
And what's the vision? Away. Sorry to step on your
toes,
I was
just going to ask that damn question.
I'm asking it.
I guess our vision is it could go multiple ways, just with all the ideas I have and Katrina has. It's, do we franchise and open up multiple locations of Loaded? Or do we open up a different concept and another restaurant? And it's just every day we're back and forth. I'm like, well, which way do we go? So I'm sure the universe will kind of
And you're only 4 months
guide
in?
us. Yeah.
Thinking about that. Good for you.
Yeah. So it's, we're always, even before we open Loaded, we're like, what are we going to do next? Mm-hmm. So it's just constant. It's all we talk about.
You guys are visionaries. You really are. Yeah. And I totally see the franchise model working because it's simple but unique. Mm-hmm. Where most people that try to franchise, it's overcomplicated. You couldn't get somebody else to do the same way you do it. Mm-hmm. With your concept, I think, man, Loaded it everywhere in the country.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So, who knows where we'll be in 5 years with that. It's we don't try to plan out too far in advance because every time we don't end up anywhere near, that 5-year plan. We're not linear people. We're kind of all over the place. So
what do you call it? Like the second one, Loaded again. What's the next one called?
Well, what we did is this one's Loaded Haverhill. Just in case, all the graphics, everything is Loaded Haverhill. Mm-hmm. So if we open up, say Loaded Andover or Loaded Boston, who knows?
Yeah. And the graphics too, I'm impressed by. So your little guy, I forget what his name.
Zudi, astronaut.
It's a little astronaut, but he's wearing a belt that says LFG. So my kids, naturally, because I'm a terrible parent, they're, hey, it's let's go.
Oh.
But it's not. It's Loaded Food Group. So
okay. Yeah, that's our corporation.
Yep. I love it.
That's good.
That's why my kids are always, let's go.
Yeah.
Thinking about those babies, you got 3 beautiful babies. Mm-hmm. What do you want them, your legacy, when they're looking back at you and Katrina, what do you want them to think about mom and dad?
One, that we were great parents, that we were always there for them, and, giving them the space to be themselves, not placing our expectations on them, but just kind of us giving them a container to just explore the world, explore themselves, and just be who they are. But also for them to see us just going after what we want and taking the risk, working together, and always growing together instead of Katrina has her career, I have mine, and we come together for family time. No, it's always we're doing this together. Work is also kind of family time for us, and there are days where Katrina and I both have to be at the restaurant, so the 2 older ones are washing dishes and just using up all the soap, and one of us is holding the baby, and a lot of the older generation in the restaurant, they will say oh yeah, when we opened up 20 years ago, we were in the same plate. We had the pack and play, for the baby right next to the window. And, you do what you got to do. And that's what we're doing.
That's awesome. So. In terms of that, you've mentioned your dad, you've mentioned your brother. Who are other like coaches or mentors in the area that have really formed you and shaped you?
I don't think there's anyone in the area that has really formed me. Like I said, I learned a lot living in Pittsburgh and experiencing that restaurant culture. And the year we left the Pittsburgh in 2019, they were actually named the number one food city in America.
Really?
Yes, you wouldn't know it.
Wow.
Highly suggest visiting.
Okay.
It's great food. Just a great city overall, and it's small. It's really cool. A lot of personality. So I got a lot of inspiration there. But in terms of like what's molded me, it's just kind of going more within and going. I went through a huge self-help and self-growth journey, and just I inspired to find my true self and just live that instead of aspiring to be like someone else. And it's not always easy. It's, there's some rolling in the mud, through all that. But, we've come out, both Katrina and I have come out so much stronger than we were, just 5 or 6 years ago. I've hit rock bottom multiple times, but we always bounce back up and we're resilient. And, we try to make sure we're always learning lessons from, the world around us and from our own mistakes. So to answer your question, there's no one that stands out as who I aspire to be. It's more of just like finding me and, really leaning into that.
I freaking love that. And you had a post the other day on Instagram. I don't know when this will be coming out, but you were talking about some of those dark moments, and you talked about, was it Fasting Tuesdays or something like that? Or
oh yeah.
It's powerful, man. So
yeah,
I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that post or.
Well, yeah. Basically, when we, kind of branched off originally and moved to Pittsburgh, and focused on our dream of running the holster business, we struggled for a while. Luckily it was just Katrina and I. We didn't have any kids to support, and we were so broke that we were like, oh well, on Tuesdays we won't eat to save money on groceries.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So, we'd just go all day Tuesday without eating. And,
Wow.
We struggled a lot, and
that's why
we got
it's
through it.
called Loaded now, because we're every day, baby, we're gonna load up,
Fill it up again.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, we've struggled. We've been on public assistance. We've been through it. We've experienced the highs and the lows, and we've mismanaged our money in the past, and we've made our mistakes and learned from that. And, we're just trying to do things right and, be a good example for our kids.
Yeah. So I think you're doing a great job on that end.
Yeah, it sounds
thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
You are definitely, you're talking about the highs and the lows. I don't think you've hit the highest high yet. You are still on the upward swing right here.
Yeah. Thank you.
If other business owners want to learn from you, or people want to learn about Loaded and all of that, how do they reach out to you?
My personal Instagram is the Primal Food Dude.
Primal Food Dude.
Yeah, so you can find me there. Send me a message or just comment. I'm very open. I'm very transparent. I like sharing my experiences. And
so if somebody was like just looking to get into the restaurant business, you wouldn't mind them just hitting you up and just saying, hey, Anthony, what advice would you give to somebody thinking about opening their own place today, right now? What would be one piece of advice?
That's a great question. I'd ask, do you really want it? And do you have the support? Because if you are going to do it right. Don't just have an idea and not have the means to accomplish it. Do you have the funding? Do you have to secure a loan? And if so, is that loan going to be enough for your vision? Because I'd hate for them to open up just to enter the daily grind of 16 hours a day to barely break even. And, you don't want to open up a place that's just like the place next door. It's like, I guess, do you have the funding? Is your concept different? What's your unique selling point? And what are you bringing to the area?
With that, I love it. Thank you.
Freaking love that. Yeah. Anthony, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having
me. I had
me.
a blast, man.
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
about
great.
you, Ben.
I can't wait to check out the Korean corn dog.
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Just
What are you doing for lunch today?
finding out what's in Haverhill because I don't know anything in Haverhill, but first place I'm going is Loaded.
Yeah. Again, Anthony, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for sharing the story and being so authentic and transparent about everything, too. I think that's important to the business owners that are listening here, too. So with that, I say, Ben, we wrap this one up and we save it for the next one. All right?
Thanks, buddy. Thanks,
Yeah,
Anthony.
thanks, guys.
Thanks, Anthony.
This has been another episode of Voices from the Valley. If you'd like to be a guest or know someone that would be a great guest, send us an email at voicesfromthevalley@gmail.com. Want to learn more about Ben Tallberg and Amesbury Foreign Auto? Head over to amesburyforeignauto.com or call 978-388-5959. Want to learn more about John Bachmann and Norwood Insurance Agency? Head over to norwoodinsurance.com or call 978-372-5921. Thanks for tuning in to Voices from the Valley.